And Liverpool's kings of the court are champions of Europe once again.
Dreams and Songs to Sing, episode 3, with me, Anto Hall. I got Anto Poyne from RTE with me as well. Anto, how are you dealing with this self-isolation? I'm not good at maths, but I think we're in week 64.
Yeah, I'm actually not too bad, to be honest. It's you kind of get into a little bit of a routine, but yeah, you lose track of the days, that's for sure. It's going okay, but you sort of need a bit of light at the end of the tunnel, I think. I think everybody feels like that at this stage.
I concur. And Stewie Curran, after his absolutely astonishing debut last week, his podcast magazine called it decent. Stewie, lifelong Liverpool fan, lifelong Oasis fan. Is that right? Because me and you had a debate about Be Here Now during the week. Is that,
yeah, we did. Yeah, we did have a debate. Outrageously, you kind of poo-pooed the album.
Well, the thing is, we talked about Be Here Now, so why I've got you now, I might as well ask this question, and I know it's a tough one, and I know you're going to say, there's too many to choose, but if you had to pick one, what would be your all-time favourite Blur song?
Out of Time, I would say. I'm a big fan of Out of Time. They got.
I was going to say there's no wrong answers, but you've just given me a wrong answer.
Country House is a very good one.
It's too un-Blur.
Yeah, Country House, I suppose, is all right, but. Yeah, it didn't win the war. It won the chart battle, but it didn't win the chart war.
Very good. That is true. That is true. I like that. I like that. From one wordsmith to another. Before I give this lad the mic, I just want to give my own introduction to him. I was living in Asia for a good few years, and over in certain parts of Asia, they have very limited access to certain broadcast media. So you don't get the BBC, for example, in Vietnam, and parts of China, don't have Sky Sports. So finding kind of a link to finding out about football was kind of a bit challenging at times. And I was a bit slow to find the Redmen TV. But one day they introduced basically an Irish correspondent. And it was great to hear because the two lads that present the Redmen TV, they're Liverpool born and bred. And just to hear kind of an outside voice is something that to this day, I still don't think there's a lot of it. So that's kind of what we're trying to do as well here. So I've got Jonathan Higgins here. Jonathan, absolutely pleasure to finally meet you. I know you did the Redmen TV, you've done Off the Ball. What's it been like for you, for a man who earns his bread off football? What's the last, say, 8-10 weeks been like for you?
Well, firstly, thank you for the kind words. It's always a bit head scratching when you hear people from such a distance that listen to me rambling. I wouldn't even listen to myself at times, so it's always nice to hear that. Yeah, I guess everybody's in a similar scenario, aren't they? It's been a whirlwind. The days are just rolling into one. I was just telling you off air, I was actually at the home leg of the Atletico game, and coming up to that game, it was a different world right back then. I remember even getting some medical advice at the time, what to do, and I was kind of humbling on whether to go to the game, and eventually I decided I would, when I was absolutely paranoia. I was going around with my bottle of hand sanitizer, and I actually washed my hands so much that the backs of the hands were pretty much red raw after the game, and I came back, and since then I was literally in the airport on the way back. I wasn't feeling the best. We know the way the game went. Lack of sleep with no advice, and then the country's in lockdown. I hardly managed to get home, and I've pretty much been home since in a weird kind of bubble. And as I was saying earlier, there's far more important things than football in the world. But my God, I miss it like crazy.
Oh, stop! I mean, I heard a few people's accounts of the Bournemouth game, which was. I mean, now that you think of it, it's unimaginable that game actually took place. But a lot of people said that even though they were desperate for Liverpool to get 3 points, and the Madrid game as well, they were desperate, big games, closing in on the title, turning over the 1-0 deficit, that it was a strange atmosphere. A lot of people's minds were on. You know, it was impossible to just completely switch off what was going on. Were you in the ground? Were you able to just switch it off and just think about the football, or was it always on your mind even when the game was happening?
I guess up until the game kicked off, it was always on my mind. And, you know, you're thinking, I remember I was over there with my friend and like we took a taxi down separately. We were ever so cautious. You know, there's a lot of people doing the same. Beforehand, before the game, it didn't really, like, you bear in mind, it was such a big game, and it was a game where we had a lead to overturn. It didn't have that same sort of vibe. It was eerie. It was a very cold night as well, and particularly after the game, I noticed that usually, you know, you come out of Anfield, and particularly after a European game, people kind of lounge around and gather around. They'll have a chit chat. You see groups of people meeting up, having chit chats all around the ground while kind of you wait for your taxis or your way home or whatever. But after this game, even though, like, you definitely have to factor in the fact the result, and everyone was so disappointed, and we're knocked out of Europe, and there was that disappointment. But like in the blink of an eye, every place just disappeared, and it took us. I think it took us about 2 hours. We got a taxi home, and it took us about 2 hours to move like 5 minutes away from Anfield. It was incredible. It was just a weird, eerie kind of sensation, and then everything like it just escalated after that. Yeah, it was just looking back on it now. It's very, very strange times.
Yeah. I want to get stuck in Istanbul, obviously, in a minute. That's what we're here for. But before that, this is for Anto, because I know you're the same. You know, you make your kind of coin talking about football and sport. But what's your take on how the media, specifically the football media, obviously, how they've covered football since the lockdown? Because as a fan, I don't know if you agree with this, Stewie, but as a fan, I was kind of hoping a little bit more. I don't know. I know that it's difficult to write about something that's not happening at the moment, but I could do without the transfer gossip windows at the moment. I know that technically clubs are still interested in buying players, but it just seems all a little bit tacky at the moment. And, you know, I still see a lot of clickbait stuff there. What's your take on it? As someone who's, you know, you're trying to fill columns of sport that's just on lockdown. What's your take on how the media have kind of covered sport or football over the last, say, 2 months?
Well, it's a strange one. Go on.
Yeah, well, they're caught between two stools. I mean, obviously, nobody saw this coming, and this was approaching a part of the season where, like, it was shaping up to be a very dramatic finish in the Premier League, and then, of course, domestically, we were coming into what, for say, RTE would be probably the biggest couple of months in the sporting calendar, which are the GAA championships. So there's enormous voids to be filled. And although there is no sport, there's still an enormous appetite for sport. So what you're seeing is a lot of nostalgic pieces, quizzes, reflective pieces, and things like that. And obviously, there's only so much of that you can do. So at some point, you know, what we found actually on the desk is that it has actually been quite busy. I mean, you know, there's been days where it's been quite busy because even though there's no sport, there's still sporting stories. And the biggest sporting story at the moment is whether the major leagues are going to be nulled or what's going to happen there. So I think, look, everybody's kind of scrambled to react to it in some way. It's a very unusual situation. And the other thing is that nobody knew how long it was going to last. So there is a little bit of maybe, you know, well, it's, you know, initially you were thinking it was only going to last a week, 2 weeks, 3, and the longer it's gone on, I think everybody's had to readjust. So I think it's been very difficult for the media and for everybody, because it's just been impossible to predict how it's going to play out, how it's going to last, and we still don't know that. We really don't know. Yeah. We hope that it's going to come back in June, and things might, you know, after yesterday's update, things might start to creep back into like sort of June, July, August, but no, we'll just have to wait and see.
Stewie, I don't know about you, but when this was first pitched, I mean, it seems so long ago when Karen Brady, because she was the first big name to kind of call for it to be null and voided. And when she pitched it originally, I really did think, Liverpool aside, I thought it was a ludicrous. I just thought it's never going to happen. And as the weeks have gone on, the death number, the fatalities have gotten higher and higher each day. You know, Boris Johnson being, you know, on life support machine basically, and now the French league's cancelled, the Dutch league's cancelled. She's come out again literally in the last hour calling for, you know, she thinks I think this time it's maybe not an opinion, it's just her honest kind of thoughts on, she predicts that it will be cancelled. Where do you stand at this point? Because I was confident, now I don't know, and now with two kind of major European leagues cancelled, I could go either way now for me.
I suppose, look, I won't go into Karen Brady. I mean, I think her reasons are pretty transparent enough, along with Gold and Sullivan. I mean, their reign as owners of West Ham has been pretty shambolic up to this point. And, you know, look, I won't go into why Karen Brady. I mean, it's, as I said, it's pretty clear to anyone why Karen Brady's looking for the season to be declared null and void. And as I said last week, for me, the sport would lose all integrity if they declared it null and void, and it would be setting a dangerous precedent as well. Because what happened, like there more than likely is going to be another kind of peak next season, and you have the same people that are crying for the season to be declared null and void, in the next breath are talking about next season must start on time. So there's no, like, it's hypocrisy on a very strange level. But as far as the sport is concerned going forward, for me, it would lose all integrity, because there is more than likely going to be another peak. And if they do set this precedent of declaring a season null and void, then the next season has to be declared null and void the minute there's another peak. And again and again and again until there's a vaccination where there's no more peaks. But up until that point, you might have ridden off 4 or 5 seasons, and it might have been over a course of a year and a half. But you know, I don't. For me, the sport itself would lose all integrity.
Okay, and John, finally on this, because let's be honest, we could give a whole podcast to this, but we're just trying to look at, we're trying to look back on happy memories here. But the last thing about this is, some people have said that at the other end of this, whenever it ends, that football will never be the same again. And some people are talking like some sort of beautiful football utopia, like there won't be any ridiculous. You won't see Coutinho going for 146 million, or Dembele going for whatever, the guts of 100 million and things like this. Do you predict any major changes, or do you think it'll just come back and it'll even be worse, or it'll be the same? How do you feel that this is going to change football, if it changes at all?
Well, I definitely do. I think this horrible scenario has escalated, something that had been bubbling along for quite some time. Particularly, I think when you look at it, we're obviously a bit more biased and focused in the Premier League, and we've come immune almost to large TV deals, and then on the back of that comes some outrageously transfers. And I'm not just talking about the top teams spending big money. You go right down the Premier League, and I try not to get into it too much, but you look at the squads now. Take a Watford squad, for instance. Some of the players and the quality players that are in that is almost ridiculous for the level of the league, and where they stand in the league is crazy. You wouldn't see that across Europe. So I think the whole issue had been bubbling for some time. I think this has escalated it, because I think a lot of people, a lot of football clubs in particular, while they are huge businesses, they're receiving some incredible volumes of money, but the thought of the league stopping, and all of a sudden big teams are looking, oh no, where's our money coming from? We're going to have to use government schemes, for instance, to pay wages of staff and players as well. I think it's a big wake-up call, and I do think that, I don't know if it's going to be, a complete light switch moment where we go, that's it, no more big money being spent. But I do think you've got to look at it. And I think even you look at our own transfer plans, I think will be completely and utterly kind of restricted and looked at a different light now as a result of this. And I think, without getting too much into it, as I said, I think it's probably for the better, really, because football, as we love the innocent kids, and we're talking about happy memories, it had become in a bit of a dangerous area where you had been looking at it from a spreadsheet point of view, and the whole business and the empire that it went with it. I think that's going to level a little bit off here now as well. And I repeat, it's probably for the little bit for the better as well.